This is the Adam Messer Show, and I'm your host, Adam Messer. And my special guest today is Retta Bodhaine. Welcome, Retta. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Adam.
So I am really excited to have you on the show today with us here. And would you mind giving everybody just a brief little introduction about yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Retta Bodhaine. Jackie of all trades. Try to learn everything I can. Mostly I'm known for my work with the Atlanta Radio Theater Company and my literary magazine, The Gray Sisters.
I'm excited about that too because you do interviews and you do like reviews and those kind of things, as well as you're an author, right?
Yes, I am.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought you had put out a new book not too long ago.
No, I have not put out a book. I've been putting out literary magazines and audio podcasts.
Okay.
And I've also been writing audio dramas.
That's okay. I think it's the audio drama because I knew it was some kind of story that you had done not too long ago. Because I've been trying to follow it. There's so much stuff out there, honestly, but that is pretty cool. So can you tell us more about like your Gray Sisters magazine and all?
Sure. The Gray Sisters is a modern myth and fairy tale literary magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's short stories between 1,000 and 3,000 words where I'm asking people to tell stories that would be the myths of today or the folklore of today.
Mm-hmm.
You can use old gods and write them in current stories, or you can make up something completely new that explains the phenomenon of what's going on around us.
That I think is really interesting, especially mythology and those kind of like fairy tales and like old myth, like stories about like different things. And I've always found it interesting how people can do like a like a modern telling of an old fable or fairy tale or something like that.
Yes, I love it a lot. I've always been drawn to myths and folklore, and I always liked the idea of bringing more whimsy into our everyday lives now.
Mm-hmm. When did you start the magazine?
I started it last June. I knew I was going to start it in December of 2019, and I knew that I was going to start it in June of 2020. I did not know that between December and June, COVID was going to become a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that has thrown a few monkey wrenches into the plan. But in general, we've been able to get it done, and it's been a really awesome process. I've gotten to work with a lot of authors that I never would have met otherwise and gotten to hear a lot of different perspectives on something that I thought that I already knew a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a lot of fun working with everybody.
That is cool. Are you the publisher or are you the co-publisher or?
I am the publisher. My sisters help me out with it, and by sisters, I mean some biological, I mean some not biological.
Mm. Yeah, tell me more about that.
Okay. My sister and I decided that we were going to do this because we've both been really into mythology for a long time. I will admit I was more of the person who was behind the catalyst. I wanted to make this happen, and I wanted her to make it happen with me, so she is.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of my other friends who I definitely feel like are my sisters. We might not have been raised in the same household, but they're connected to my soul in that way,
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've also been on board with it, and honestly, Betty's been awesome. She's been helping me with the editing, she's been helping me with the selection process, and now she's helping me with the social media things, because I am not as great with the social media things as other people could be,
Mm-hmm.
I'm more about the creative process than the marketing process, so it's kind of nice to have some help in that regard.
Oh yeah, definitely. It can be daunting sometimes with all the different things that you got to do, all the different hats you have to wear.
Yes, and part of my process is that I learn how to do everything. So if it ever comes down to the 11th hour and for some reason it's not done yet, I can do it even though I wouldn't have done it as well as somebody else might have.
Mm-hmm. Is the Gray Sisters name like kind of like a take off or like a tribute to like the Grimm brothers type thing because of the fairy tales?
It is actually. It's both a nod to the Grimm brothers for fairy tales and the Gray sisters, spelled Graeae, from mythology.
Okay.
And I liked being able to hit both things since that's what I'm asking for. I'm not just asking for myths. I'm also asking for folklore.
Mm-hmm. I always found like the talking about folklore, I always found those kind of stories like you know the old wives' tales or like the old like urban legend or you know rural legend or whatever. I always found those kind of interesting. Remember like back in the day camping and you'd all like kind of tell like little scary type stories or whatever, and or even if you know spent the night over, you know, like had a little sleepover or something like that. You know, I always thought those were kind of fun.
Yes, and I don't know about you, but I spent my life around a lot of creative types, so even just among ourselves, we've kind of created some things that have come to be. Like, there's a haunted horse ranch in North Georgia now that's not haunted for anybody except for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sorry, I've had a migraine all day, so I'm not like just over the top with it, but
No worries, I understand.
yeah, this is weird because it's like the first time I've been on the radio doing the show and having actually have a migraine. I know it's so crazy. I think that's one of the blessings about doing a community radio station. Like this is, y'all, this like with you, Retta. You know, being a publisher, I publish, but this is it. There's a lot of elbow grease in this. I don't have a production team. The closest thing I have to that is my son plays, you know, music for me on the show, you know, and so that's one of the things I think is, you know, but the show must still go on. That's the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
The show must still go on. So I love the fact that you're doing that. I'm trying to think. I know that there's somebody else in our circle that like they post about it a lot. Because I see it on Facebook, and do you want to give a shout out to the rest of your team?
Sure. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure the person that you're thinking of that we have in common is Ellie Rain.
That's it, Ellie. Yes.
Yeah, who I think is going to be on your show later.
Yeah.
And Ellie and I, we're best friends socially. We have a lot of fun together. We've worked on some projects together, but for the most part, we're cheerleaders for each other's progress.
Okay, wonderful.
She has her books that are fantastic. I highly recommend everybody read them. But we have found, unfortunately, that because we're so busy creating our own stuff that we can't really create in the other person's world without putting our stuff on back burner.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always out here. We're always championing each other, but we're not usually able to create together so often.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I understand that.
Yeah. And that was actually really hard for us because when she started doing her first audiobook, of course, audio, I jumped in. I'm like, yes, I'll be the recording engineer and the editor, and we'll do all this. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, I do not have time to be doing all this if I'm also going to be publishing the literary magazine and working as a producer at the Atlanta Radio Theater Company, as well as holding down my day job.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. Matter of fact, Josh Vasquez, who's a good friend of mine, we're kind of like with you and Ellie. We've been talking a lot, you know, because with my Valhalla books, I've got different authors lined up to publish this year, and then I started a little magazine where I interview authors called the Storytellers Mag. And so it is very daunting. I feel like sometimes when you're trying to publish and you're trying to do all the other things, and then like for me, I know one of the challenges I have is trying to find time sometimes when I'm having to do the publishing or the social media or you know whatever, to you know carve out that time to write, because I've got books that I want to write too. And so
I run into that all the time.
Yeah, what's a way that you kind of balance those things, and you put them, like you kind of juggle those different plates?
Um, well, in my day life, I have to be a very responsible adult.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of gotten used to having to do whatever affects other people
Mm.
before I start doing the things that affect just me first.
Mm-hmm.
So I try and make it a priority, the things that I'm working on a team with, or the things where other people have entrusted me with their work, and I do that first. But that does mean that my writing gets backburnered more often than I'd like it to. And often it's kind of when my muse is tired of being backburnered and makes it so I can't focus on anything other than what my current writing project is. And all of a sudden I lose 2 days of sleep and I've got 40 pages written.
Mm. Yeah. 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 I tell you, the approach that I've been taking with it too is, at least this last 3 or 4 weeks, I've been just trying to, belt out at least 500 words a day, not putting a tag on, word count, but just kind of, sitting down and writing, because I have a third book that I want to finish, and it's just been kind of sitting around, and I've been, like I was talking to Josh, I was like, I've been getting a lot of stuff done, but sometimes I feel like I'm not getting the right kind of things done, right? And, so I could understand that. Sometimes I haven't done a 40-page, I have not done a 40-page marathon like that, though, but that's pretty awesome.
Don't get too excited. It's not 40 quality pages.
Oh, yeah. No, of course, the first draft is not going
to... pages.
Yeah, like first draft stuff, like, it's always going to have, like, it's just like, you're kind of just putting it out there, right? So.
Yeah. And something that actually has helped me get back to my writing a little bit recently is my god sister is 14 years younger than I am. She's in college right now. She's looking for some advice on, like, how to navigate this whole finding herself and becoming an adult type journey she's on. And so I've started a blog that's mostly aimed at her.
Oh, there you go.
And so every so
Coming
often
of
I
age
just
type
get on
thing?
a train of thought. Yeah. Like, okay, so here's some challenges I faced in my 20s that I kind of wish somebody else had talked to me about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot easier to do when it's low pressure like that, when I know I'm only talking to her, when I know that I don't have to worry about necessarily being grammatically correct or even editing or anything like that, as long as I just go back and reread it out loud to myself to make sure it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It brings back some of the low pressure, just pure joy of writing.
I think that is a big factor, for most people, because you see these, I'm just going to put this out there. You see these folks out there, they're like, they're just doing amazing things, and they're, whatever. And then at some point you're like, man, I wish I could, get some kind of level of acclaim like that. And then you think back, like what you just said. It's like, taking off that pressure and just doing it for the pure love of it, right? I feel like that's so important. But, it's a much overlooked factor, I feel like, for people, that they're like, oh, you kind of, at some point, you're kind of like, why am I going through the motions here? If I'm not enjoying it, if it's just work, why am I doing it?
Well, growing up, I always said I got my best writing done in math class.
Oh, there you go.
Which might explain some of my grades.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always thought that, like, growing up writing, I didn't do that for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I didn't show anybody else anything until 2016, pretty much.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was actually Ellie that convinced me to come out of my writer's closet. She was reading through some of the stuff that, once again, is not for public consumption, and she's like, it doesn't really count, though, unless you publish at some point. Like, you have to let other people see what you're writing. And at that point, I went ahead and I submitted something to a literary magazine of Kimberly Richardson's. She had a literary magazine called Violet Windows, and it was the first thing I'd ever had publicly published. And from there, everything just kind of snowballed to where I was constantly in the public's field. And this is kind of my first return to non-public writing, which I understand is weird because
Nice.
it's a blog, so that's public, but I also don't think it's something anybody's really ever going to look for.
Well, you never know. You never know, right?
We'll find out, but I don't know. I don't like thinking about it like that to begin with, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it becomes later, it can become. But what it is now is a return to private writing for me.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'll tell you something that I've noticed too. Just for myself, I have been focusing more on the folks that are turning into me, and I'm turning into them more. And I'm just not chasing folks, you know. So, like with the Valhalla books, for example, I started a new email list last year. And the folks that are engaged there, like social media is great and all, whatever, but it's just not the same. Like the folks that are checking out that, or like the folks that take the time to read, the magazine or whatever, and they give us feedback. Those are the kind of folks I'm like, wow, I'd like to meet more of those kind of folks.
I agree. I love it when people get on board, when it feels like there's a feeling at Dragon Con, and I call it the good side of mob mentality.
Mm-hmm.
When everybody gets together and you're having all these good feelings, and because everybody has the good feelings or because everybody's on the same page, they kind of exponentially raise everybody's experience.
Yeah, everybody's vibing together.
Exactly. Now, there is the other side of that where all of a sudden everybody's vibing in the bad way, and then things like mob mentality in the negative direction can happen.
The angry shirtless nerd rage group.
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like the angry gamer, yelling and screaming online, and like you're like, no, I didn't come online to play, video games so I could listen to somebody raging out.
Tons of table flipping.
Right.
Actually, do you have Tabletop Simulator in Steam?
That's one of the ones that's on my wish list, but I've never picked it up.
They have a function in there where you can flip the table and then hit undo, and everybody goes right back to work.
No way.
Yeah, I always thought that was like one of the funniest little things that they would just put in, where you can just rage flip the table, hit undo, and everybody goes back to playing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I played played WoW World of Warcraft for a long time, but I haven't played it in a long time. And I saw they had a new expansion pack, and I have every expansion pack. And what's happened the last 3 of them, I bought the expansion pack, and I'll play for like, I don't know, a month maybe, or a couple weeks. And this one I was just like, I don't think I'm gonna do it. But one of the things I really enjoyed about that was, playing with my friends. I think that's the thing I miss the most is like, I have a group of friends, we played games together for a long time, but, everybody's got their own life and, whatever. And especially your interests, like I've been writing a lot more and that kind of thing. And just dealing with that, it's not so much that we're not friends anymore. It's just that I just haven't had the same desire to do that, right?
You only have so many spoons.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it.
It's not mine. It's something called spoon theory. I'm not going to take credit for it. I love it, and I use it all the time, but it's not mine.
That's okay. Hey, speaking of that, we're on the radio show right now, everybody. This is WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. So with the Gray Sisters magazine, talking about vibing and stuff like that, I feel like you've done a nice job with getting your group together like you're talking about and publishing different stories and that kind of thing. What you said you wanted to do it in December the year before, not this past year, but 2019. What brought you around to wanting to do that and making that commitment to doing it? Because it's a big commitment.
I'm going to be honest. When I first started, I wasn't really thinking about the full commitment of it.
Okay.
It's more, I've been a producer at the Atlanta Radio Theater Company for so long that I knew that I could do something like this.
Right.
And I knew that there were a lot of people out there telling myths and a lot of people out there who seemed to really be into mythology and folklore like I am, but that there wasn't really anything current, that all of it was retellings of the old things or a new spin on something that was old.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing that was really talking about like modern times. Like one of my favorite ones from issue 1 was Art Lasky took an explosion that happened in Tunguska in 1907, and he explained it by saying Baba Yaga got really mad at aliens one day.
Nice.
And that's the kind of stuff that I wanted, where, yes, first off, I'm not going to go too much into it, but I do like science and what it does for us and all of the explanations it gives us. But I don't think that being able to have rational explanations and being able to believe in things that have facts make it so that we can't have whimsy in our everyday lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that we can't find the fantastic and bring it into our, okay, what if it's an imp stealing our socks out of the dryer? You know, what if it's a cyclops that's buying up goats that are born with defects so that they can go live with the other cyclopses?
Or what if it's my goblin brain that wants me to say something silly and stupid?
Oh, yeah. That one's a big one for me. I deal with depression a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I've been dealing with it since I hit puberty.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a way of looking at it where you do feel like two completely different people sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Where you know that whatever you're thinking right now, even though it's completely right in your head and it feels like you 100% believe it, you know as soon as you're out of that moment, you won't believe it at all. You won't think that at all. And you don't understand how you can go from being one person to the other.
Mm-hmm.
But what if it is a goblin? What if it is a djinn? What if it is a god playing with you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I have bipolar disease, and so I totally understand where you're coming from with that. Matter of fact, about 3 weeks ago, I had that fog just kind of lift off of me, and I've been in a good spot the last 3 or 4 weeks. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been able to get, that's so weird too. Cause like when you're dealing with a bout, I don't know if for you, if it's the same way, but when you're dealing with a bout of it, people are like, well, why don't you just kind of snap out of it? Or why, it's like, oh man, I wish I'd known that 25 years ago, I just snap out of it, and I'm like, but I don't say that to them because it's my goblin brain be like, hey, you just, you have to have social cues. You have to have like, oh, they're not trying to come from a place where they're being nasty to you. They're just like, they don't understand because they don't have to deal with it. They don't live with that, like if they get sad, it's like for a day and then they're like back to, normal brain. I feel like if I get sad, it's like for a year or 2 or 10 or longer,
I know exactly what you mean. In fact, I was just talking with one of my friends earlier today how I'm having to reestablish when I'm constantly reevaluating myself.
Mm-hmm.
I am constantly trying to figure out, okay, am I actually changing into a person who wants to be doing more of X, or is that just what I am right now?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to reorient my future goals to go in line with, okay, apparently I'm really into gardening and crocheting right now? Mm-hmm. Or is that just I'm in a phase where, no, I just want to sit at home and do things where I'm not interacting with other people, and that's why those are the things that are calling to me right now.
And something too, Retta, with that same thing, we've all been going through like a social stress, right? This pandemic, financial, economic, social stress and all that. And I've had several people tell me the last month or so that they just feel like they're not doing enough, or they're not doing the right kind of things, or like I had a friend yesterday who said that she felt like she was being lazy, and I was like, we're not being lazy, we're surviving. We're all kind of like in survival mode, and that's what you do. You kind of go back to those comfort things, or you go to towards those new things that you find fascinating or that they connect with you, Like for me with the gaming, I used to play video games all the time. I grew up playing video games. I really haven't enjoyed playing video games in a while because I think for me it was the social interaction that I had with it. My friends, playing games with my friends and stuff. Well, my social groups changed, and I'm still friends with those folks or associated with them or whatever. But for me, I was like, I came to terms with that okay, well, if I want to play a video game, I want to play something that I want to play, that I'm going to enjoy. Just like with the writing, it's like, is this something that I want to do? The publishing, is this something I want to do? Is this something I want to invest my limited time with? So I can totally understand where you're coming from with that, and it's one of those things where we do have to kind of like take in question and just see, hey, is this right for me? And I feel like this is just a part of, especially as creative people or like people like myself, I tend to overthink a lot of things or overanalyze things. Something that really came.
Me too.
Something, and this might help you too, because this is something that I learned about about 2 weeks ago. But one of my guests that was on here, her name was Michelle Tracy Berger, and she was talking about like procrastination and perfectionism. We were talking about that, and she was saying that there's this term called satisficing with a CING and satisficer. So like as perfectionists or we're not necessarily procrastinating. It's not the same thing, but perfectionism's like, well, we're trying to see, like, our viewpoint is that we're at 70% of where we should be. We're really, like what Michelle was saying, is that really it's more like you're at 90%, right? Like it's there. But we see it as like, oh, well, it's not good enough or whatever. Well, a satisficer, or a person, they say it, oh, this is good enough, and I'm going to finish it, leave it as it is, and move on, right? So afterwards, after I did the show, I looked it up, and I was reading about it, and there's this term maximizer and satisficer versus satisficer. So a maximizer is a person who they play out all the different variables, and it's like having so many choices that it causes choice paralysis, right?
Yeah, my boyfriend calls it analysis paralysis, and
yeah.
He points it out whenever it starts happening to me in games.
Yep, and like with gaming, the min-max theory, like do the least amount of work that produces the most amount of results, right? Like 20 to 80%. And so I thought it was min-max at first. I was like, oh, but it's a little bit more than that. It is like the analysis paralysis. With the satisficer, it's like, okay, you know what? This is good enough, right? And I'm going to stop. I'm going to put this out like this, and I'm going to move on. So I've been practicing that the last couple of weeks, with just moving on and saying, hey, okay, I know this isn't exactly where I want it to be, but I want to move forward to that next project, right? And
yes.
So, yeah, and it's been helping me with that. I and I think for me, I've been trying to apply it to like, okay, well, it's like right now, like I'm focusing on I want to lose some weight. I've gained some weight since I've been on a temporary layoff, and I don't like carrying around the extra 15 pounds, so I'm working on that. But then I have to think, oh, well, I don't like feeling extra, a little extra chubby or whatever, but that's just where I'm at right now. It's just a snapshot in time, right? And I know that I didn't gain the weight all at one time, so I'm not going to lose it all at one time, not healthily at least, right? So I've just kind of wrapped my brain around that. I'm like, let's just move forward one thing at a time, right?
Yes, and I don't know if this will help you at all, but I am heavier than I used to be, but I also used to be playing varsity soccer and running 6 miles a day, and I just don't have time for that anymore.
Right.
I also don't know that I actually physically could do that anymore. But I remember back when I was doing all that, I still wasn't satisfied with how I looked. there were a lot of things that I was very critical about myself about back then. And then I got older and I would look at the pictures of me back then and I'd be like, what was I thinking? Why was I feeling that way? I liked the way I looked back then, but I'm only liking it now that I'm looking at it from a future perspective.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
my mother says that she still does that. And this is her idea, actually, where she always imagines that no matter how she feels about how she looks now, the person that she'll be 10 years from now will really wish that they'd appreciated what they had when they had it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try and take pictures as often as I can and wear the clothes that I don't feel completely comfortable in right now and do all these things knowing that in 10 years I'm going to be so angry at myself for not celebrating the way I wish I had now.
Mm-hmm. I've never had that problem per se, but I've had that, like I used to be really into fitness when I was younger too, right? I used to lift weights and that kind of thing. And so I know where you're coming from with that. I never felt like, oh, I don't look good or whatever. For me, it's always been more like I feel like the heavier part, I just don't feel as good as when I'm lighter, like just carrying around the extra weight. I just don't feel as good. So it's more like I want to feel better, not so much because I know exactly where you're coming from. And I know that because we all have like hang-ups on like, oh, my nose is too big or, whatever, you know what I mean?
Yep.
For me, it's always been like, and I've got to do the station break real quick, Retta, but I want to share something real quick before I do. I had a friend of mine who just turned 30 not too long ago, and she was like, oh, I feel so old and whatever. And I was looking back because I'm 44, I'm about to be 45, and I have friends from, like older than me, and I have friends who are younger than me, and thinking about 30, like I felt like now I look back and I'm like, man, I was still a kid then, even though I was full grown full grown adult, had adult responsibilities, had kids, my wife and I had been married for a while, and that kind of thing. I've been living on my own, paying bills, that kind of thing for a long time. Looking back, I'm like, oh, you know what? So I get where you're saying with your mom with that 10 years from now thing. Like, oh, looking back 10 years ago, I'm like, where was I at, 35 or whatever, right? And where am I at now? Where am I going to be at 55, So, but yeah, that's good. All right, so we'll be right back. I've got to do the station break. Everybody, you're listening today to the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer, with my special guest, author Retta Bodhaine, who is also the publisher of the Gray Sisters magazine.
That time again to support WRUU through your vote in the Connect Savannah Best of Savannah poll. It's easy. Go to Connect Savannah at www.connectsavannah.com and click on the Go Vote image. Read the instructions and then scroll down and click on the image labeled Media. Type in WRUU in both the Best Local Radio Station and Best Talk Radio Station categories and click the vote button for each. Thank you for listening to and supporting WRUU in the Connect Savannah Best of Savannah poll. This is a message from the Georgia State Department of Public Health. There is a State of Georgia hotline people can call with questions or if they think they may have been exposed to the COVID-19 virus. It is 1-844-442-2681. If you believe you're experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 or have been exposed to the novel coronavirus, please contact your primary care doctor, an urgent care clinic, or your local federally qualified healthcare center. Please do not show up at an emergency room or healthcare facility unannounced.
All right, here is Sebastian Messer, everybody, and he is going to be playing live in the studio for us. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Sebastian. And we are back. Retta, how are you doing? Hello?
Hi.
Hey, can you hear
Sorry,
me?
what did you just say?
I was saying we're back. How are you doing?
Doing well. How about you?
Good, good. Yeah. So yeah, my son Sebastian, he plays live in the studio and on the show, and he's got his own band and all. And he's been doing it for like about 6 years now, so it's pretty cool. He's only 18, so about to be 19 in August. So I'm always amazed. I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's awesome. What kind of music does his band play?
Thrash metal.
I would probably really enjoy that.
Yeah, yeah. They're just kind of getting their wings underneath them. They're going to be starting to record here soon. They played their first couple of gigs, and so yeah, he plays on the show for me, and I always enjoy it. I really like listening to him.
Very cool. I like being able to get family involved in creative endeavors, be able to connect on that level with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me it's fun because he's my son, obviously, but I told him, I was like, listen, son, if you weren't good, you wouldn't be on the show. No, I'm just kidding. I did tell him, I was like, you're really good and people like to listen to it, and they always give him compliments and stuff like that. And I was joking with him one day. I was joking around. I said, hey, if you weren't any good, I wouldn't have you on the show. So, but it was just a joke. It was funny. I'd have him on anyway.
I actually, my sister and I, a lot of people, when they hear us talk to each other, they think that we might be a little bit mean, but we both appreciate that brutal honesty.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're both the people that if we don't like what you just did, we're going to tell you, and we're not going to try and like make you feel bad about it, but we also don't want you going out like thinking that other people are going to think that's good when we did not.
Yeah, I know. I'd rather you tell me, than just go around thinking like, oh yeah. It's so weird too.
Definitely.
Talking about writing like that, sometimes have you ever experienced this where you write something and you think like, oh, it's pretty decent, and then somebody really enjoys it, and then somebody else is like, no, that was just like not for me. I did not like it at all.
I told you I write audio dramas, and one of my favorite parts about writing the audio dramas with the Atlanta Radio Theater Company is that I get to hear them read out loud by the voice actors while I'm still in the process of writing. So part of my beta listening process is I actually get to listen to it read out loud. And there are moments where I've heard something that I've written and I'm like, oh my gosh, that came out so good. And then I have those opposite moments where I hear something that I've written and I'm like, well, that was a bust.
Yeah, it was better in my head.
Yeah, that fell a little flat, or, well, that was not the delivery I expected you to do at all for that.
Mm-hmm. Or, yeah, like you said, that was not how you thought it would come out. So.
And the other day, so I told you, clearly, I'm into mythology, and the current series that I'm writing for the Atlanta Radio Theater Company is about a chicken who is a witch familiar, and he has been separated from his witch. And he gets to learn more about himself and his own powers, and it's a coming-of-age story for a rooster, so it's interesting. But I had it read out loud, and two of the people that were reading, one of them was like, well, this one part that you did went on for a little too long, and I get that the joke is supposed to be that it's going on for too long, but you even went on too long for that. And the other person who read the lines goes, no, those were my favorite lines to read. Please don't cut them.
You ever watch Family Guy?
Yeah, some, not all the time, though.
Oh, okay. There's a scene, like, they've done this as a gag. It's one of those ones where I'm like, oh my gosh. Peter Griffin, like, bumps his knee and he skins his knee. I don't know if you've ever seen that. And he's like, he's like over, just like.
Yes, the, like, 5-minute groaning.
Yeah, like, okay, I get the gag. I get it. Or like the one where he's trying to scoop up the frog into the window. I'm like, I get it. And then other people are like, oh, that's hilarious. It's hilarious. So tell me more about the radio show. Like, I I have no clue. I've never heard of it, and I've never listened to it, so I'm starting from zero. So clue me in.
Well, it's not a radio show. It's a radio theater company.
Okay.
So we perform in a variety of different venues and different ways. Throughout all of COVID, we've been getting much more into our YouTube channel.
There you go.
And we've been producing things that way. We've been doing virtual conventions. We've all had to learn how to build our own home studios, how to record ourselves both with audio and video.
Yeah.
Send that all to the editor, who then has to deal with the fact that he's getting all this raw material from so many different sources, and he has to make it all seem like it all came from one uniform source.
Okay.
But it's been working for us, and we actually got enough people now on our YouTube where we have our own YouTube name. You know how you have to have like at least 100 people, and they have to stick around for a certain amount of time for you to be able to have that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this past winter we did something called the Advent of Artsy. I was the producer on it. I will admit I dreamed a little too big, and I've got to give a major shout out to Brian E. Smith, who was our video editor for most of it, and we ended up doing 25 shows in 25 days, and he was a trooper through all of it.
Wow.
He made the magic happen, man.
Wow. That's a lot. I mean, like, people don't understand sometimes, like, how much work goes into that.
Yeah, that was not my original intention when doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably should have called, okay, we've got enough before I did. It was originally going to be a 12 days of Christmas thing, and then it ended up being 25 days.
Got it done, though. That's good.
Yeah, it went really well for us. We got a lot of stuff out there, and we've got 100 people on there. So now we're YouTube at Artsy Radio, which is ARTC. We call ourselves Artsy because it's fun.
Yeah. ARTC Radio?
Yes.
On YouTube, that's cool.
Yeah, that's the YouTube channel, and we've got a variety of things on there. We do science fiction, we do horror, we do comedy. I mostly write comedies when it comes to radio dramas that are short, but it turns out anything longer starts going into that dramedy section.
Yeah. I'll have to check that out because, like, there was one that I came across quite by accident called the New Aberdeen Tapes, and it was it's like a radio. It's new. It's on YouTube, and it's but it's modeled after like a 40s radio serial, radio drama or whatever. But it's set like and you might like it too because it's set in this town called New Aberdeen, and excuse me, and this town is like ends up having to be quarantined because of like an alien invasion type thing, and something about like and I haven't gotten all the way through. I've only listened to like the first couple of episodes. But it's like a radio drama like that, like you're talking about, like, you know, just a radio show production, or not.
Was this produced in the States, or was it produced in the UK?
I'm pretty sure it was New Jersey. I think the guy's from New Jersey. So,
okay, because I know that there was a radio drama I was listening to that was similar, where it's kind of like, it's not quarantined from the rest of the world, but the aliens have kind of made it so that you can't really get in or out of the town, and everybody has kind of forgotten about the town, besides for them. But I remember listening to that one at one point, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, go ahead.
I aspire to be John Finnemore one day. I would love to write like him. He writes some of the best audio dramas I've ever listened to. But of course, he's over with the BBC, and we're trying to get up to BBC levels here in the States now. And I think we're actually accomplishing a lot with the advent of podcasts. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I love audiobooks. And so I keep calling it like a radio show, but like a radio serial or, you know, I don't even know what the right term is. Like, you know, you were saying comedy, horror, you know, sci-fi. What is the term for those kind of shows? Because to me, it reminds me of like the old radio serials that you would listen to.
Yes, and the reason why I say like Artsy is the Atlanta Radio Theater Company, and it's not so much a radio show, is because we produce a lot of different things. It's like Valhalla Books. you wouldn't say that you only have one type of book because you produce a bunch of different types of
Right.
books.
Right.
And we're the same way with the company. We do a whole bunch of different things. We've got some serials that are very much the old-time radio shows, and we've got things that are a little bit more modern, and we've got things that are one-offs, and then we've got some short things that you pretty much only get to see either on our YouTube or if you go to the conventions where we perform live.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got-
What I'm asking, like, it's not per se the genre. I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, what is a good way to call that kind of new radio production, because I think there's more people doing it, like you said, with the podcast, because it's not necessarily a podcast and it's not a radio show.
It's audio drama or radio drama, depending on who you're talking to.
Okay.
And even within the audio drama community, there's a lot of different ideas about what it should be called, depending on what it is.
Oh.
Like some people
aren't gatekeepers the worst sometimes, though. Like I honestly, for me, I like that kind of thing, like the radio serials. I keep calling it radio serials because that's the only thing I can think of. But like an audio, I just I don't like gatekeepers. I'm like, no, like, you know, if somebody's interested in it, please don't, you know, rain on the parade and like, oh well, you should call it this or you should call that. I'm like, well, you know, just kind of help me get on the, you know, the beach first, you know. Before you tell me, like, well, you don't want to go out, you know, when the waves are hitting and crashing on this rock because they'll sweep you away. You know. Like, I don't need to know all that, buddy.
I'm just trying to learn right now.
I just want to go get my suntan lotion on and, you know, catch some good vibes.
Yes, I do think that you need to build the passion before you start getting sucked down into the details.
Yeah, well, like I literally came across. I got to do station ID. I'm sorry, everybody. You're tuning in today to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Sonics Community Radio Global Soul. This is the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host. I'm your special host, right? I'm your host, Adam Messer, with my special guest, Retta Bodhaine. And so we're talking about audio dramas or radio dramas right now. And I came across this guy's thing by accident, right? Somehow or another, I think it was in the Horror Writers Association, or it was in some kind of like horror thing on Facebook or whatever. And, you know, just scrolling through, and I was like, oh, what's this? And, you know, I started listening to it, and I was like, oh, I kind of like that, because I like stuff that's different and, you know, not homogenized, regurgitated storytelling, you know? And,
I agree.
You know, and that's something that I really appreciate. And I started listening to it, I was like, oh, this is different, you know? This is something I really can get into. And then I went onto their Patreon page, and I was like, oh, you know, I just do $1. You know, it's not a whole lot or whatever, but, you know, it's just one of those things where I'm like, oh, I like this, and, you know, check it out or whatever. But when you're talking about like your drama series, that's so cool that you're doing that, you know, with the Artsy Theater Production Company or whatever. I think it's really, really cool that you're doing that. And do you mostly write, or do you perform, or?
Well, I came on board wanting to be a writer, and then I got there and I started learning how to do literally everything that there is to do, to the point where I became the education director, and I've actually taught a course called All Things Artsy, where you learn how to do everything that there is to do at Artsy.
Really? Wow.
I will not be teaching that course ever again. That was a monumental project.
Oh, no.
I will be teaching micro courses that teach you how to do little aspects, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, here is a 6-month course on how to do literally everything with audio drama production.
That, I tell you, that might be something there that people would like, because I have a friend here in Savannah, Leisure Hurt. She does little short stories that she produces for herself, and so it's kind of interesting. I think that's something that people are coming. You know, it's something that people are really kind of getting in. Not everybody. You know, I know it's not going to be for everybody, but I think that's like a different way for people to consume stories. That you know, like you said, with the podcasts, you know, people are really into podcasts now, and you know, like with the radio show, like this is live right now, but most people that are going to be listening are probably going to be on the internet, you know what I mean? Because it'll be out there for everybody.
Yeah, and if you have anybody that's wanting to know any of the different aspects, the Atlanta Radio Theater Company is a 501c3, and we're actually an educational organization, which is why I started trying to put things into classroom format.
Oh, cool.
Because a lot of the learning opportunities there are you come and you kind of watch and then you get to do things.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this is awesome, and I'm learning a lot this way, but I know a lot of people would prefer to have more information rather than just be thrown into the deep end of the ocean and have to learn how to swim.
Yeah.
For me, my learning style is I do like to drive. I like to have hands-on experience, and that's how I learn best. But I know a lot of people, they like to read the manual. They like to take a class. They like to read a book. They like to have something so that they have a base knowledge before they're just getting in there and messing around with things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is where the development of the classes came from. And like I said, we're still teaching, and I still have the class formats. I'm just not doing the big 6-month class ever again.
Yeah, that's a lot of commitment and time.
Yes.
Especially if you're volunteering and doing it. So.
Yeah, and with the Atlanta Radio Theater Company, everything is volunteer basis, which I actually really love. There's, like you said before, when you get a team together and you're sitting there and you're creating, there's a special kind of magic there.
Yeah, je ne sais quoi. I love that French term. It just means I don't know what, but it's magical.
Every time I hear it, though, I can't help but think of Dr. Evil going, a certain, I don't know what.
Yeah, exactly. $1 million. Oh, man. I always think of Austin Powers whenever I think of Dr. Evil. So, anyway.
A lot of very quotable lines in those movies.
I'm telling you. Well, Retta, I really appreciate you being on the show with me today. Quick, where can people, I know you said about the Artsy on YouTube, but where can people check out the Gray Sisters magazine and the Artsy Theater Production Company?
If people want to read about the Gray Sisters literary magazine, it's at thegraysisters.com, spelled Gray. Grey was already taken. They sell a lot of really cool merchandise, but that's not me. And then for the podcast, which comes out every other week on Saturdays and has author interviews as bonus content put out as well, that's short stories from thegraysisters.com.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And then on the YouTube for Artsy?
Yes, it's YouTube/Artsy Radio. And if they want to know more about participating with us, which right now, it doesn't really matter where you are. Most of our participation is virtual anyway. It's artsy.org, artc.org.
There you go. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Retta, for being on the show with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you.
You as well.